Ladies and gentlemen, at this time we're going to begin the funeral services of Mr. Michael C. Langendorf. We welcome all of you here, and we welcome the many people that are watching online. For those who are here, please take a moment to be sure that your cellular phones have been turned off, and please keep in mind that your masks need to be worn at all times, except for the people that are speaking at the podium. Officiating today is Rabbi Evan Moffick and Cantor J. O'Brien from Macomb Solel Lakeside.
Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity, and youth to age, from innocence to awareness, and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom. From weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat, to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. These words, which were penned by Rabbi Alvin Fine, really express the Jewish philosophy of life and of death. They tell us that we come here in grief, in deep grief, but we also come here as much as we can with the measure of gratefulness. Grateful that God blessed the world with the life of Michael Langendorf. Our Jewish funeral service is fairly simple, consists of some reading, some psalms, some reflections, and concludes with the El Mole Rachamim prayer. We'll continue now with the words of the 23rd Psalm. They are found in our pamphlet. Please feel free to join me. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. At the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. The beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember Michael Langendorf, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. As long as we live, Michael too shall live, for he is now a part of us as we remember him. I'd like to invite up several speakers who will share their memories. We'll begin with Emily.
I've written and rewritten my thoughts more times than I can count. Every night when I'm tossing and turning in bed, more and more stories flood my mind. Some make me cry while others make me laugh hysterically. My dad was something special. I admired him, respected him, and loved him immensely. He made my life better and brighter. And at times, he embarrassed me by his pocketless jeans and his colored glasses from Big Lots. He would get so mad at me when I refused to go inside Big Lots with him when I was a teenager. He would say, "What, you're too good for Big Lots?" My response would always be, "Yes." And he'd quickly respond with, "Who raised you to be a snob?" And my quick-witted response was, "You created this." We would both laugh uncontrollably. I still wouldn't go inside, but at least our dialogue was funny. It's hard to know how to best articulate the profound impact my father had on me, and how lucky I am to get to refer to him as my father, as I was fortunate enough to have him all to myself. But he wasn't just my dad. He became a father figure to so many people I know, and even for some people I have never even met. My dad impacted the world greatly. His whole focus in life was to make a difference. On September 24th, 2002, the year I went off to college, he wrote me a beautiful email that I will share and weave throughout my words today. My dad always provided me with motivating and inspirational words. He understood me, knew how to respond to my needs, and in return, we shared a closeness that was unfathomable. As you see today, he has greatly impacted the world. He was a human connector. He thrived off of meeting new people and truly getting to know them. It was one of his greatest attributes. He was authentic and sincere. He always reiterated that the most important thing you can do in life is help people. My father's favorite time of year wasn't spring, summer, fall, or winter. It was Kappa Alpha Theta's Dad's Weekend. As you can see, my Miami girls sent the flowers. He thrived on campus and enjoyed getting to meet so many young, beautiful co-eds. Theta's Dad's Weekend freshman year was the start of something special and unique. I'll never forget sitting in Skipper's Pub at Miami of Ohio with 3 of my sorority sisters and their fathers eating food and conversing. The other fathers were all physicians and just as devoted to their daughters as my father was to me. There is a law in Ohio that you're allowed to drink with your parents if you're under 21. He asked the 3 other fathers who all were allowing their daughters to drink if he should let me drink. Obviously, they all said yes. And my dad turned to me and said, "Well, if you get the same opinion from 3 doctors, it must be the right thing to do." And from that moment on, Big Mike was hooked on partying for Dad's Weekend. Every year, the same dads got together, which always led to the most memorable and fun weekends. When I studied abroad my first semester of my junior year, my dad approached my mom and told her that he was headed off to Theta's Dad's Weekend. My mom's response, "Emily isn't even there, she's in Europe." So we obviously couldn't go, but we made sure to go above and beyond my senior year with 2 Dad's Weekends, and we even made t-shirts, "Dad's Gone Wild, the final season." After the dads had visited and were on their way back home, I asked my roommate if the dads had fun. Her response, "Duh, your dad got all the dads high." I quickly called my dad and asked him what he did. His response, "None of your effing business." We laughed hysterically. My dad's motto has always been, "Work hard, play hard," and I have continued to live life that way. My dad and I could talk about anything and everything. There wasn't a topic that I was uncomfortable talking about, nor was he uncomfortable answering. Our conversations were always fluid, disjointed, raw, powerful, and even comical. We could finish each other's thoughts in sentences. I must admit, sometimes our conversations got heated and involved one of us storming away. We're both very stubborn, but we'd move on and move forward. Our love for each other was unconditional. My father has always supported me in my dreams. He told me, "Find yourself, find what you love to do, and find a way to do it." So when I told him I wanted to be a social worker, he was thrilled. My father has always been so dedicated to everything I've done. When I played soccer, he was the announcer and baked chocolate chip banana bread for my teammates. When I decided to go to Miami, he got a license plate frame for his car. When Danny and I got married, he surprised me by wearing a fake tux t-shirt that he wore to the rehearsal dinner. I wasn't very happy about that. When it was time for me to take my LCSW test, we spent a week together in my basement working through the entire study guide. He quizzed me, discussed case examples, reviewed the diagnostic manual, just so I felt confident enough to take the exam, which I did thanks to him. Because of his involvement in my life and my interests, I was able to accomplish so much more. In high school, we made the silly decision to sit on the disciplinary committee together. Who would want to sit on a committee with their father in high school? I can picture the conference room and the meetings that we attended like it was yesterday. I admired his confidence, his ability to articulate and advocate for others, and I believe it was the first time in my life where I saw him. Not just my dad, but a man out there making a difference, and that I was lucky enough to call him my dad. My dad and I had the opportunity to take a trip together in 2017. We were each other's dates for my best friend Jason Solly's wedding in Stowe, Vermont. I still smile ear to ear when I think about that weekend. It was a weekend of laughter, fun, tears, amazing food, and lots of 70s music. We dined at my friend Nikki's restaurant in Boston and ate like it was our last supper. We rented a car and drove from Boston to Stowe and even stopped off at a diners, drive-ins, and dives place in New Hampshire. We sat at the counter, engaged with everyone and anyone. We were a deadly combination. We loved to talk, hear people's stories, and by the end of the day, we'd made friends with the whole place and probably both handed out our business cards. My dad loved handing out his business cards. I have two right here, actually. My dad was quickly embraced by Solly and his friends, and once we reached Stowe, and my dad and I couldn't have asked for a better father-daughter trip. My dad has always reminded me that life is about enjoying life, knowing when it's hard and making the best of it. Just gotta do your best and try to have fun along the way. My dad truly enjoyed life and always had fun along the way. When I was pregnant with Max, my parents agreed to come up every week to take care of him. They were so helpful and selfless. My dad never complained about his drive back and forth and always was so excited to walk through our front door. My parents watched Max weekly for an entire year and continued to come every other week until he transitioned to preschool full-time. They absolutely made sure Eli had the time with them as well. When the pandemic started, it was the first time ever where my parents were not able to be with us. Then when Max started kindergarten, my mom offered to be Max's teacher and my dad offered to be his cook and driver. We went back and forth if they should get an apartment or if we should all live together under one roof. My mother found an apartment she loved and was ready to put an offer in, but then I found a house that would fit us all. Our friends all thought we were crazy, and I'm sure my parents thought we were crazy too. But we did it, and I'm so grateful we took that path. We had dinner every night together that consisted of a home-cooked meal by Michael, glasses of wine, and lots of laughter. I wish I had those nights back. I will admit our nights ended early as we scattered off to our rooms to get ready for bed. Michael was notorious for playing his music too loud and talking on the phone all hours of the night. It was like he was the teenager and we were the parents. He appeared comfortable in his dorm room downstairs, equipped with all his favorite things: TV, stereo system, snacks, gummies, and CDs. I would come down every night to say goodnight. He asked about my day, tell me about Max's, complain about Republicans, and tell me he loved me. I so badly wish I could rewind time and all be back in our kitchen table eating dinner together and laughing. When the weather was nice, we'd sit outside and dine. I'm so grateful that we had that time together, and I hope Max and Eli have fond memories of their grandparents living with them and their Z's delicious cooking filled with an abundance of love. On February 16, 2021, my incredible dad was diagnosed with a brain tumor. At that moment, we didn't know the severity, but he was terrified. I can't remember a time where my father panicked. He always held it together for us. When Sheri would be running from the mouse in the house, he stayed calm. When the expiration date on the milk container was a week old and we told him we wouldn't drink the milk, he tested it out first. We all know Michael doesn't believe in expiration dates. When a tornado touched down only miles away from our house in Urbana, he was outside watching it and taking pictures. And as I was going through IVF, my dad reassured me that it would all be okay. He was our strength, and in that moment, I had to be his. He wept uncontrollably on the phone and expressed his desire to live, to fight, and he reminded me that I was the greatest thing he's ever done in his life. Words that any child wants to hear. There isn't a day in my life where I questioned my father's love for me. My dad was my everything, the first man I ever loved, my guiding light when life was hard. I'm not sure how I will go on without him, but I know it will get easier, but it will never be the same without him. I miss his morning calls, his random texts and ridiculous texts, his delicious and fattening food, His excessive comments about everything, the way he knew every Seinfeld episode, his fixation on my 7th grade basketball team winning state and still telling everyone about it 25 years later. I'll miss his laugh, his outdated jeans with no back pockets, him picking his teeth with a piece of paper, his love for jazz, his inspirational words, his guidance, and his unconditional love. After my grandmother passed away, he reminded me of this. With life comes happiness and sorrow, reward and loss, the wonder of love and the sadness of losing loved ones. I am truly heartbroken. But as he's told me my entire life, he loves me forever, and I will love him forever too. I will continue to live life like he would, and I hope we all can live life like Michael did. Enjoy every day, count our blessings, and realize how truly fortunate we are and all that we have experienced, felt, and understand. I love you, Dad.
Beautiful, Emily. Hello, all. My name is Glenn Weiss. I've been a very, very close friend of Michael's for 65 years. Over these decades, I felt like a brother to Michael, even though Michael has his own beloved and very supportive brother, Robert. You know of Michael probably as a teacher, social worker, counselor, mentor, teacher, brother, grandfather, husband. He was all of those things and touched our lives in those capacities. So, as truly amazing as all that was, I'm going to tell you what it was like just to be his close friend for 65 years. We lived on the same street in Northbrook, met in 1956, and grew up together. On the photo slideshow by Jake, you may have seen a photo of Michael and I holding hands when we were 3 or 4 years old. So young, soon after we met. We went to grade school together, junior high and high school together. We learned to ride bicycles together, learned to drive cars at the same time, and watch Cub games in the Langendorf home basement. We attended fortnightly classes to learn the proper way of co-ed dancing, and and tried to learn how to talk to the enigma that was and is girls. As you may know, Michael always really loved cars from the beginning, and one of Michael's first cars was a Peugeot that he painted in day-glow psychedelic paint, as was the late 60s fashion for the cool kids. That car turned heads, I'll tell you that. His last car was a very nice Volvo, which sadly he was only able to drive for a few weeks. After high school, we attended University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana together and were roommates. The first night in our fancy dorm room with a kitchenette at U of I, we decided to make some macaroni and cheese. Simple beginnings, right? Well, during prep, I had shaken down the cheesy flavor packet and cut it open carefully. Michael hadn't noticed what I had done, shook the packet again, making the cheesy powder spray all over us, a huge mess. Or maybe I was the one who shook the packet. Well, no matter, off to McDonald's we went. We did take some science classes together, and then our areas of study diverged. He studied social work, I studied pre-med. We attended musical concerts together. He loved music. Together we saw Steve Goodman and John Prine, among many others. We developed a love of folk music, rock music, and jazz music. Michael continued to love music all his life and liked to play it loud on the best possible audio equipment. In fact, if any of you are looking for some extra amplifiers or speakers, just see Sheri or Emily. There's a mountain of equipment. Briefly, we were also Illini guides at the University of Illinois. That's when upperclassmen show the new students around when they either visit or start classes. We figured it could be fun and, we might meet some girls. Anyway, we had a good time, but no romances that I recall. But this chapter illustrates a main point I'd like to make, and that is I was mostly always introverted. And without Michael as my friend, I probably would have never thought to be an Illini guide. He was as gregarious as I was not. I suspect all those who know Michael already know this. Michael made friends with everybody, everywhere. Outgoing, fun. He found ways to share experiences with everyone. He even made friends with all his specialty physicians. Wow. You want to play Jewish geography? Who knows better than Michael? The first time Sheri and Michael visited New York City with my wife, Marcia, and myself. Michael had never been to New York City, by the way. He meets somebody in the street that he knows in Manhattan. Beat that. Now can you see how lucky I was to be friends with him? Next, we were young married couples, starting our families in the Chicagoland area. By then, Michael was enjoying his next great joy and skill, cooking. Somehow, Michael became not only a good cook, but a great cook. If you've ever been lucky enough to have eaten a full Michael meal, maybe Caesar salad, smoked ribs or chicken, twice baked potatoes, chopped liver, and the best cheesecake ever for dessert, then I'm sure you remember the deliciousness and the sheer volume of it all. So good. Both our families moved from Chicagoland eventually to Central Illinois, and we continued to take vacations together, see Cub games at Wrigley Field, attend plays and musicals, and of course, eat some fantastic food. Our children grew up and shared many adventures and became close friends. Being friends with Michael was both easy and exhilarating. At this time, I'd like to thank Sheri, a fantastic wife and friend to Michael, always. Her love shone during the past year. Michael was never alone, never. Michael was adored by many, but none so much as his daughter Emily. A special bond between them, as you just heard. Emily and husband Danny and grandsons Max and Eli, supportive and loving, and Michael loved to be with his family. He was ready to cook for them at any time or take them bargain shopping. I'll miss my close friend every day. Who will appreciate our odd sense of humor? Marx Brothers every New Year's Eve? Sure, of course. Firesign Theater? Monty Python? Seinfeld trivia? Yeah, we'll do all of that. I'll miss Michael calling me. We spoke virtually every day, with few exceptions, until 2 months ago. Thank you for all being here, for honoring my friend. His memory will be a daily blessing for me. We all know life is short, and all things are temporary. There's nothing you can hold for very long. But like in the photo that you may have seen, I was lucky enough to hold my friend's hand for 65 years. Peace be with you, Michael.
Hello, everyone. I'm Diane Marlin from Urbana, Illinois. I'm currently serving as the mayor of Urbana, but long before that, I had the honor and privilege of being friends with Sheri, Michael, and Emily. So I wanted to tell you about our journey with them. Our family's life with Sheri, Michael, and Emily began 36 years ago, in January 1986, when our 2-year-old daughters, Emily and Kate, began attending cooperative nursery school in Urbana. Now, this was a preschool that hired professional teachers but was administered by the parents. And of course, you know which parents soon became very involved in the administration of the school. We parents changed diapers, cleaned bathrooms, set policies, supplied the snacks, and assisted in the classroom. And as people would say, it was so Urbana. Emily and Kate hit it off right away. Sheri and I did too. And my husband John and Michael used to commiserate during the vegetarian school potlucks because they loved meat and there wasn't any. And we heard about that for the past 36 years as well. So we all began as nursery school parents, became good friends, and now are blessed to be family. We've grown up, grown older, shared every stage of life, parenting, grandparenting, sharing love and loss and joy and grief. And now we've come to this day. Grief is very personal, and each of us here is feeling Michael's life and death in their own way, and all I can do is share mine with you. So if you knew Michael, you knew his encyclopedic knowledge of movies and TV shows, decades worth. But for Michael, the one show, the ultimate reference, the source of all you needed to know about life and love was Seinfeld. So I'm turning to Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer to help me today. Seinfeld on being a good husband, Jerry. Being a good husband is like being a good stand-up comic. You need 10 years before you can even call yourself a beginner. I can't count the number of times Michael would come into our kitchen when they were over for dinner, because Michael liked to be in the kitchen, and he'd say, "How do you and Sheri put up with us?" And I'd always say, "Well, we appreciate the fact that you're trying." But the truth of it is, he once applied for an appointment as the Democratic state senator from our district, and each candidate had to give a speech. Michael began his speech talking about Sheri as an adult education instructor and Emily as a social worker, and how important their work was to the people he wanted to serve. There was no doubt who was most important in his life. Even when he was trying to make a case for himself, he made it through his wife and his daughter. He was immensely proud of them, he loved them, and he knew that these two amazing, resilient women were the foundation of his life in all that he did. And that was never more apparent than during the last year of his life, as they and we all swung between hope and heartbreak. Seinfeld on Friends, Jerry. "Look, you're a nice guy, but I actually only have 3 friends. I can't handle anymore." In contrast, Michael had more friends than anybody I know. He gathered them from several generations, and he never let them go. He befriended people he mentored, he taught, he grew up with, went to college with, worked with, lived near, bought cars from, and doctored with. He loved to talk, and he loved to listen. He spoke with his whole face. He used his voice, his eyes, his eyebrows, his head shakes, his eye rolls, and then leaning back in his chair with laughter. And if he couldn't talk in person, he was on the phone. We still have a landline, probably the last 2 people in Urbana to have a landline, but if there was a message on our answering machine, I knew it would be from Michael or my mother. Michael's message was either, "This is Michael, call me back," or "I'm not paying my recycling taxes." We had an ongoing battle about that. But then you could have an hour-long conversation with him about cookware or Ina Garten recipes, we differed on those, local politics, dishwashers, DCFS. He could talk about anything and make it interesting. And that's what made glioblastoma the cruelest of diseases. It stole Michael's voice and his personality and his words. And I often, over the past year, thought about all those words that must be piling up inside. But what that cancer couldn't steal was the outpouring of love and respect from everyone he touched. And he lived long enough to experience it from hundreds of people over the past year, his family and the friends he cared for over the decades. So over the past 12 months, there's been a river of love, laughter, tears, and stories that's carried Sheri and Emily, Danny, Max, and Eli on this journey, and they'll be consoled by it forever. Seinfeld on listening, George. Do you ever get down on your knees and thank God you know me and have access to my dementia? Michael was proud to be a school and psychiatric social worker. He was a fierce advocate for the children who needed help the most, People consulted with him about their parents' dementia. He saw child abuse, depression, neglect, just about every trauma that could be inflicted by one human onto another, and he gave his best to the kids who had received the worst. Sometimes the system fails our children, but Michael never did. He lobbied for his profession with the Illinois Association of School Social Workers, and he fought to keep the School of Social Work at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And believe it or not, especially in this day and age, years ago the university was very close to closing that school, and Michael joined with others to keep it open. And my God, how we need social workers today more than ever. He was a mentor, a confidant, and just a really good listener. People would start talking to him. He once spent an hour driving my mom in a 4th of July parade during a campaign. And she shared her life story with him, and he learned things that I never knew. Seinfeld on the steak and the sizzle. Kramer. Well, you know what they say. You don't sell the steak, you sell the sizzle. Michael cooked the steaks, and he was the sizzle. He read Cook's Illustrated like the daily paper. And he loved to cook, as you heard, in great quantities. And when he came to dinner at your house, I loved it because he brought half the dinner. And then I never knew what would show up coming through the door, but he'd walk into the kitchen and just loomed large in the doorway, and there was the coleslaw, the cheesecake, chocolate chip banana cake, flourless chocolate cake, bread pudding, artichoke dip, pulled pork, jambalaya. Who makes jambalaya just on a whim? But Michael did. He could do that. And the ribs. He loved the ribs. He had 2 smokers, and he could smoke anything that walked or swam. And when he'd come and we were cooking outside or grilling on the deck, it was just this very intricate dance that he did because he couldn't stand not being in charge of the grill. So he'd edge over close to the grill on the deck, he'd casually pick up the tongs, and then he'd start rearranging the meat on the racks, upper and lower, and move them all around, adjust the flame, and sizzle them to perfection. And they always were perfect. It drove him nuts because my knives were never sharp enough. He finally ended up buying me a paring knife. He couldn't stand it anymore, and I'll treasure that for the rest of my life. He had enough Le Creuset casseroles to open a store, and oddly enough, it's not oddly, surprisingly enough, he's used them all. It's remarkable. One of the memories with him that I'll always treasure is my first ever trip to Costco last April. Now, I know if you live up here, you're stunned that I'd never been in a Costco in my life, but we didn't have them in central Illinois until last year. So after his surgery and he had recovered and was back home in Urbana, he agreed to take me on a tour of the brand new Costco. He, of course, knew it like the back of his hand. So one Sunday morning, I picked him up. He took me for a tour. And actually, this was not only our first trip, my first trip to Costco, but my first time ever being the driver and Michael being the passenger, which was an experience in itself. And I've lived in this town for 50 years, but he told me every single turn to take and which direction to go because he liked being in the driver's seat. Anyway, we walked in the door, and first thing you know, he runs into a woman that he knows, and they spent 10 minutes having a conversation in the produce cooler, which was the story of his life. Everywhere he went, he knew somebody, and he could strike up a conversation with them. After that, we wandered up and down every aisle. We spent 15 minutes discussing olive oil, because that's what you do with Michael. He ended up buying a couple of shirts, and he picked out a very elegant gold bracelet for Sheri for Mother's Day, and she's wearing it today. Then afterwards, he wasn't ready to go home. We had to go get falafel. You didn't need a subscription to Consumer Reports if you knew Michael Langendorf. If you were in the market for a refrigerator, a range, television, stereo, or a car, you called Michael. If you were trying to remember the name of a character in a movie, you called Michael. If you had to fix the settings on your dashboard or on the remote, you called Michael. If the light was blinking on your VCR, you called Michael. He also schooled me in the difference between leather and vinyl. We once bought a recliner that I thought was all leather. It wasn't, and I heard about that mistake for 20 years. Seriously. Michael liked nice clothes, but most often you'd find him in shorts or those baggy pocketless blue jeans and an Illinois or Cubs t-shirt. He had dozens of dress shirts. He ironed them himself. He liked classy ties. When he wore polo shirts with no pockets, more often than not, there'd be a ballpoint pen stuck between the two buttons on the front. He also owned more eyeglasses than anybody I know. And a lot of times he was wearing two pair. One was on his forehead, the other was on his face. And then sometimes he was using them both at the same time, and he would just, went up. It's kind of like bifocals, Michael's version. Seinfeld on life. Jerry. The best revenge is living well. In the end, it doesn't matter how we dress or where we worked, but who we are. The irreverent, irascible, imperfect, as we all are, Michael Langendorf lived well, and he left a legacy of caring for all of us, including the double dippers, the close talkers, and the sentence finishers. In the end, what is grief but love persevering? Our love for Michael and his love for us will persevere. And Michael, there's always soup for you.
We are both honored and humbled to have been asked to speak today. From the beginning, we were devastated to learn of Michael's diagnosis. When he called to tell us, it felt as if the world stood still. To be honest, being here today feels all too soon to saying goodbye. It broke our hearts back in October during our last visit with Michael at Emily and Danny's house, when Michael started to tell us a story. Here he was with a smile on his face, but he was unable to find his words. How could it be? Our friend who was so articulate, brilliant, never lacking for words, how could he be stricken with such a devastating disease? Just didn't seem fair. We were frustrated for him. Michael felt like a brother to us, a very hilarious brother, that is. He was such a breath of fresh air, a dear friend with a heart of gold who always dropped anything to be there for us, and he would always have us in tears from laughing so hard within mere minutes of getting together. We were so fortunate to have him in our lives. We met Michael in 1985 when he started working at St. Elizabeth Hospital in Danville. Very soon after meeting him, an organic relationship blossomed with both Michael and Sheri. When we got married the following year, Michael stood up at our wedding. He was so kind, had so much wit, a true mensch who also never shied away from telling it like it was. When Michael started working at St. Elizabeth, he was told by his boss to stay away from the social work department. According to his boss, psychiatrist, Melody and her team knew nothing. Well, of course, Michael had his own plan in mind, and being the good listener he was, went straight to the department to introduce himself. The entire department loved Michael. Believe it or not, the department fell in love with him long before he even brought us one of his famous cheesecakes to our meeting. We took to him right away because he truly respected our work, and in return, we valued his vast knowledge on the topic of everything mental health related. He was such a strong advocate for all of his clients. In every community he worked in, he left better than he found it, making relationships with everyone from the janitor to the mayor. He knew no strangers. A few years ago, at one of our darkest moments in our lives, we called Michael, and he came and stayed with us in the emergency room and told us he would be there for us as long as we needed him. He supported us in a non-judgmental and vulnerable way, that only he could. We're sure many of us today have had a similar experience with Michael. He genuinely cared. You just knew it, just by his choice of words and the honest look in his eyes. Through this experience, we learned from Michael to truly cherish the people who call to check on you. Do not take this for granted, the things we would do to get one more phone call from him.
We fondly remember the meeting Michael and Sheri's pride and joy when she was just 2 years old. Over the years, we were fortunate that our 4 girls and Emily played together often, and she became our honorary 5th Ehrlich sister and daughter. Together, our families have celebrated and will continue to celebrate many Simcas over the years. Mitzvahs, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, wedding, brisses. Alexa was so happy she got to tell Michael about her and Jordan's pregnancy just a few months ago. Our girls loved Michael. We became family. Just a side note. You talked about Michael's love of cars and sound systems. So 6 months ago, we picked him up at one of his hospital appointments, and we had just gotten a new car, and I said, listen to our sound system. That's not bad. We got him home, he said, come here. Took me in the garage, sat me down, and said, listen to this. I said, I understand. He also knew my dad very well. We lived in Danville. He worked in Danville. We owned an electronics supply shop, cellular store. Michael would come in and handle with us on cell phone prices. And we'd go to lunch quite often. And if I drove or he drove or whatever and he came back to the store, my dad would sometimes drive him to work. Well, the last time my dad drove him to work, he didn't stop at a single stop sign. Michael called and said, take his license away. Sheri and Emily, please know we will always be your family. Michael was so proud of the 2 of you and loved you, Danny, Max, and Eli so very much. It has been humbling to witness the love and care you both dedicated to take care of him throughout this recent journey. You approached each decision with both intentionality and dedication to this man whom you both deeply loved. And we know he would have done the same for both of you. This was and is a true testament to how much you 3 love and loved each other. Our hearts, along with our daughters and their partners, were torn when we heard of Michael's passing this week. We hope Michael knew how much we all loved and respected him. We, along with Michael and Sheri, lost another friend just this past September. Based on age, we were golf partners. And in Danville and Urbana, it was pretty hard to get a foursome for 4 Jewish guys. But so we called ourselves, Alan was JB1, Jew Boy 1, I was Jew Boy 2, and Michael was Jew Boy 3.
Based on age.
All based on age. We can only hope that Michael and Alan are again continuing their argument about their golf putts. Because Alan got pissed, when Michael would give himself a 5-foot putt. Michael, you did so much for others in your 68 years of life, and you will always be part of us. We miss you already and will forever carry you in our hearts. Your memory will always be a blessing for all of us who are lucky enough to call you our friend. Lastly, none of us truly know if we will see each other again after we die, but we can only hope and imagine. Grief is the last act of love we have to give to those we've loved. Where there is deep grief and loss, there was great love. The world lost a good one. Rest in peace, our dear friend.
Hello, thanks for all being here. I'm Michael's brother, Robert. I got somebody left their speech here, so I'm just going to use this. Rabbi, you'll forgive me. Everybody else is saying mostly everything nice about Michael. I probably won't, so you just have to wait and see. Just a few years ago, I lost my parents. They were in the same place. They would say right now, Michael, why did you die so early? They'd be very upset about it, as we all are. It's just a terrible thing to die so young. So I'll fill in what we haven't. Glenn and everybody's told about his life. I was there, lived with him when I was younger. He's a year and a half older than me, so I was there. You know, we had a good relationship. We fought a lot. My parents went on vacation. My grandmother stayed with us. So I was trying to take an ink stamper on him, and he kicked my hand and broke my finger. So that's what brothers do. So what did I do? We played softball. I threw 2 from shortstop into the dirt. He broke his finger on one hand and his hand on the other one. So for the whole summer when he was working at the hot dog stand, he was serving people like this. What would you like with your front? Would you like one on your hot dog? So that's why I got into food. That's my brother. When I went to high school, when I went to grammar school, Michael was always a year and a half ahead of me. So he always gave me the straight dope on what was going on. So I was ahead of the game. Then I went to college, and he was at Illinois, and I was at Illinois, and Michael was Tuchus, and everybody at the campus know him, so I had an advantage. I knew where all the shortcuts were. I got the highest grade in my psych class, Psych 100, because Michael was the proctor, 3,000 students. So what were the chances? He taught me what to do in school. He taught me what to do in life. He mentored my kids. He helped Amy become a social worker. He mentored through that process. He was very good about that. Kevin said he wanted to be a lawyer. He said, "Don't do that." He didn't listen to him. So he's been good friends to a lot of people. He's made some enemies, been arguing with people, loved people, cooked for everybody. He loves sports. He suffered through the Illini. He suffered through the Bears. He suffered through the Cubs. But he stood with him all these years. He was a good husband, a good father, a good grandfather, a good father-in-law. There's just words can't, put into what has been in his life. And my parents would be proud of him, even though he was, Rabbi, excuse me again, he wasn't a pious man, if you know what that means. He wasn't very religious, but he belonged to the temple, and he was on the Jewish Federation and all that. And probably the perfect story to end on it, to show what he was, is that there was somebody in Champaign, Urbana, who had died, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rabbi. You don't seem like the type of guy who'd like to correct people, but when a Jewish person's died, you're supposed to have somebody with a body until the burial. Is that right? Shomer or Shemira. And they called Michael up, and he volunteered to sit with this person all night. And he called me up. I go, "What, are you crazy?" I go, "You're not religious. You're the first person in the family to eat ribs." Thank you. But he did the right thing. He did a mitzvah. That's what he was about. He didn't always do the right thing, but he did the right thing. And that's what we're going to remember him for. He was a great brother. We're all going to miss him. And I've said enough, and you've heard enough. And as I said on Seinfeld, and Jake would probably know this one, it's like when Jerry, who's unemotional and always tells jokes and stuff, he got this thing where he got emotional, and he goes, "What's this salty discharge coming from my eyes?" We all have it here today. Thank you, and all for being here, and we'll all miss him.
We've just heard such powerful, beautiful, moving memories. I simply want to add this. When I was talking with members of the family yesterday, Emily, you were telling me he didn't really believe in expiration dates for food. Or you think about love really has no expiration date, does it? The love that we put into the world, the people we love, the causes we love, the institutions we love, the love that we give to them never really expires, because it goes on from generation to generation. All the people that Michael touched as a social worker, as a mentor to other social workers, that love continues in their work, and then in the work of the children and the people that they touch, and it keeps going. The love that he gave to Emily, Sheri, to his brothers and friends, that doesn't expire either. It continues through them, through the people that you've influenced, through the people that they influence. It continues. It really has no expiration date. And that's really the true meaning in Judaism of eternal life. That the love that we give, the love that we share, the love that we produced, that we generated, keeps going on, l'dor vador, from generation to generation. And in Jewish tradition, the way we honor a loved one, the way we remember a loved one, is through the words Zichrono Livracha. May his memory be a blessing. These words convey the purpose of a well-lived life, that those who know you, those who come after you, those who remember you, look to your life as a blessing, a benediction, and an inspiration. And as I was thinking about Michael's life and hearing such incredible memories and recollections, I was wondering what that thread through all of his different interests, from cooking to social work to politics, what that thread is. And it's really being someone who loves other people, who connects other people. I mean, what is cooking? Cooking is wonderful, but when we cook for other people, what's the pleasure of that is that we're giving. We're giving. I mean, who doesn't love to see someone nourished by the food that they cook? It's love. It's a sense of caring. It's connecting. It's lifting up others. And that was a theme that ran through Michael's life. It was a theme that touched Sheri and Emily and Danny and Max and Eli and Beverly and Robert and Dean and Marleen and Greg and Amy and Bobby and Kevin and Mimi and Kate and Chris and David and Jen and Adam and Laura and Scott and Deanna and Madeleine and Makenna and Jackson and Parker and Theo and David and Glenn. He's the kind of guy that would want all those names mentioned, and all the others whose lives he touched and who touched his. For each of them and for all of us. Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May the memory of Michael Langendorf endure among us as an everlasting blessing. Now, Michael loved, even though he wasn't pious, as you mentioned, I think piety is a word. I would say he was pious in that he gave and touched others' lives. And one of the musicians that he liked was Debbie Friedman. So Cantor O'Brien will share this beautiful setting of a song called Lechi Lach, which means you shall go on your way. And I was thinking this is an appropriate song because Michael touched so many people's lives who went on their way to touch other people's lives.
Lechi lach to a land that I will show you. Lech lecha to a place you do not know. Lechi lach, on your journey I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing. You shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing. Lechi lach. Lechi lach, and I shall make your name great. Lech lecha, and all shall praise your name. Lechi lach, to the land that I will show you. L'simchat chayim, l'simchat chayim, l'simchat chayim lechi lach, and you shall be a blessing. Lechi lach.
With those soaring words and with our love and our memory, I invite you now to please rise as we say our final prayer in the chapel this morning.
Hey, le mole רחמים, שוכן במרומים. המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת על כנפי השכינה. עם קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר המקיע מסיירים, את נשמות מיכאל שהלך לעולמו, בעל הרחמים. יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו. ונאמר Amen.
Eternal God, sovereign of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to our beloved husband, father, grandfather, brother, uncle, teacher, loved one, friend, Michael Langendorf, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and may his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. For you, the eternal God, are his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us all say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue at Sunset Memorial Lawns, located at 3100 Shermer Road in Northbrook. For Shiva information, please consult the service folder, and for those of you who are online, there's a link to set up times when you can be at the family's house in order to keep everybody safe and healthy. Memorial contributions to the CU Schools Foundation Urbana Promising Educator Scholarship, the Champaign-Urbana Jewish Federation Human Services Committee, or the Glioblastoma Foundation. All that information is on the service folder and also on our website. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who will be driving to the cemetery, the procession will be forming in our parking lot. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, I strongly recommend using your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections. Have your bright lights on and your hazard lights on at all times. Lastly, please do not speak or text on your cellular phone while driving to a cemetery. The following people have been asked to serve as pallbearers. When I call your name, please stand next to Michael's casket. Amy White, Kevin Langendorf, Aaron Barkoff, Glenn Weiss, Bruce Mainzer, Neil Ehrlich, David Jacobson, and Sandy Copples. This time I invite everyone to rise and stand in place as we escort the casket of Michael C. Langendorf along with the rabbi and cantor and the Langendorf family from the chapel. Then you may return to your cars. Ladies and gentlemen, you can also exit the front of the chapel if you feel that's better for you.
you know I'm bound to thank you for it.